The sound hits first, sharp, metallic, like something scraping against a frozen branch where no metal belongs. The trail cam jolts, the frame bending as if the trees themselves lean in to watch. Wind sweeps across the mountains, but the rustle feels wrong, too timed, too aware, almost answering the noise as it fades. A shadow glides between the pines, tall and narrow, moving with a rhythm that does not match the land. For a moment, the camera struggles, its lens widening, pulling in more darkness than light. Then the shape pauses, turning toward the cam as if it knows it is being seen. The view pulses. The forest goes still. A breath, heavy, deliberate, blooms across the microphone. And then the figure tilts its head, revealing nothing but deeper shadow. Why would something stop to look back? Why would it breathe so close to the lens? And why does the silence afterward feel like it's waiting? You're going to George, which is silent for sweaty. The Rangers gather around the small wooden desk inside the outpost, the SD card resting between them like something fragile and dangerous. The room feels colder than it should, the wind pushing against the window panes as if trying to listen in. Hale plays the footage again, each frame pulsing with that same strange rhythm, a kind of breathing hidden inside the distortion. No one speaks. The hum of the old projector fills the silence, stretching it until it becomes part of the tension. Pike frowns, insisting the silhouette reacts to the camera, not the environment. Ward shakes her head, saying, "No known animal behaves that way." Then the final frame freezes. The leaning figure, its shape too intentional to dismiss. The room holds its breath with them as a single question hangs. What walked across that trail before dawn? Word of the footage spreads through the small mountain town faster than snowmelt in spring. Locals gather in the diner, leaning in close as whispers twist into warnings. Some recall seeing similar shapes years ago, drifting between trees during storms. Others insist the forest has always watched strangers. Kessler listens quietly, comparing their stories to the journals she studied, every detail matching notes written nearly a century earlier. The air grows heavy with the mix of rumor and fear, a pressure that seems to pulse from the mountains themselves. Outside, the wind rises, rattling the windows, as though urging them to leave the old stories buried. But none of them can ignore the simple truth. The camera saw something, and the people here have seen it too. Kessler spreads the old journals across the outpost table, their pages brittle, ink faded but still heavy with fear. She traces a line describing a tall watcher in the pines, a note from 1883 that mirrors the trail cam footage exactly. Hale leans in, skeptical but unsettled. Ward studies a rough sketch of a figure, its limbs long, uneven, almost stretched. The room seems to contract around them as the historian explains how settlers vanished one by one, leaving behind only these frantic entries. Their voices lower instinctively, as if the forest might hear even through the walls. Every clue suggests the same chilling pattern repeating over generations, and none of them can explain why the descriptions never changed. By late afternoon, the team prepares to hike toward the trail cam's location, each gathering supplies with a quiet urgency. The wind carries a low, hollow sound from the ridge, a tone too steady to be natural. Elijah Crow appears at the outpost door, warning them not to follow the path after dark. His eyes never leave the tree line as he speaks. Pike tries to dismiss it, but even he hesitates when the forest falls into sudden stillness, as if listening. Hale signals for everyone to move, but feels the weight of the silence pressing against his ribs. Whatever waits up that trail has been there longer than any of them have lived, and now they are willingly walking into its territory. The path leading to the trail cam feels different in daylight, but not safer. The snow carries a strange texture here, as though each footprint sinks deeper than it should. Hale moves ahead, studying broken branches that point in conflicting directions, as if something large passed through without choosing a path. Ward kneels beside a patch of disturbed needles, her gloved fingers hovering without touching, afraid the smallest contact might erase a clue. Kessler lingers behind them, her gaze drifting toward the ridge where the wind refuses to blow, leaving the trees stiff and silent. Every step draws them closer to the camera's original vantage point, and with it, the memory of the shadow leaning toward the lens. The forest seems unchanged, yet charged with something waiting just beyond sight, like the woods itself is holding the secret too tightly to share. Back at the outpost, Kessler spreads open an 1883 journal with a trembling reverence. The settler's words wobble across the paper, describing nights when the trees shifted like tall men waiting. She reads aloud passages that echo the team's current findings: strange movements at dusk, sounds resembling breath, the settler's resembling breath, sensation of being followed. Pike stands by the window, staring out toward the silent ridge, as though expecting someone to emerge. Ward challenges the journals, calling them desperate attempts to justify fear, but even she can't ignore the consistency across decades. Hale listens quietly, recognizing the pattern forming in front of them, a loop repeating through time. As Kessler turns another page, the ink darkens, the handwriting frantic. One line chills them: it watches when the world goes still. Ward brings the group outside, holding printouts of known wildlife silhouettes. With steady confidence, she compares each image to the shape recorded on the trail cam, eliminating possibilities one by one. Bears move differently. Cougars never walk upright. Elk have predictable patterns. But the distortion in the footage shows something shifting its weight with purpose, adjusting to the terrain like a seasoned tracker. Hale crosses his arms, troubled by how easily every explanation collapses. Kessler adds that some settlers described the same unnatural stillness before encountering the figure. Pike, rattled, insists it felt intentional, almost curious. Ward finally lowers the papers, her voice softer than before, admitting that whatever they saw cannot be placed on any chart. Nature, she says, should not leave questions this sharp. The discovery happens almost by accident. Pike kicks aside a clump of frozen earth and stops, staring at a print so strange he calls the others over without speaking. It stretches longer than any human step, with a heel mark too deep, as if something carried enormous weight. Ward circles the print, analyzing the edges, the shape, the depth. Nothing aligns with the anatomy of a known species. Hale crouches and feels the soil around it. The ground is still unsettled, as though the track was left only hours ago. The silence thickens again, pressing against them like a warning. Kessler kneels beside the impression, her voice barely above a whisper, as she recalls a journal describing footprints, long enough to belong to a man who never stopped growing. The air seems to tighten around the word. Something made that print, and it is close. Night pulls across the mountains faster than expected, swallowing the last light in a sweep of gray-blue shadows. The team sets up a temporary post near the trail, lanterns swaying in the growing wind. Every distant crack sounds sharper, now echoing between the pines as though repeated by someone unseen. Hale checks their radios twice, unable to ignore the crawling unease settling over them. Ward tightens her coat, insisting the forest's behavior is changing. Animals are avoiding the area entirely. Pike keeps glancing toward the tree line, remembering the silhouette that turned toward the camp. Kessler scribbles notes, yet her hand shakes with every gust. As darkness completes its grip, the forest grows unnaturally still. It feels as though the mountain is holding its breath and waiting for them to make the next move. The forest thins unexpectedly as the team pushes deeper into the ridge, revealing a clearing no one expected to find. Old beams jut from the snow like broken ribs, the remains of a logging camp left decades ago and erased from official maps. Hale feels the weight of the place immediately. The silence here is heavier, as if sound refuses to exist. Ward steps slowly between collapsed structures, noting how the wood is scarred with deep, uneven gouges. Kessler brushes snow from an abandoned tool, its metal warped as though bent by unnatural force. Pike circles the perimeter, uneasy, sensing eyes on him from the shadows. The camp feels frozen in time, interrupted mid-moment, abandoned without warning. Something happened here, something the forest remembers too well. Inside the remnants of a shattered cabin, Ward discovers signs of a struggle. Splintered boards, torn canvas, and a rusted lantern lying where it shouldn't be. Kessler examines the markings on the walls. Sharp, irregular slashes carved into the grain with desperate force. Hale studies the pattern closely, recognizing a deliberate rhythm, not the random violence of an animal attack. Pike kneels beside a pile of scattered tools, each positioned strangely, as if dropped mid-reach. The longer they stand inside the cabin, the more the air seems to tighten, heavy with a memory the room refuses to release. Something drove the camp's workers away in terror, and whatever it was, it left a message etched deep into the wood. Pike calls out from the edge of the clearing, his voice unsteady. The others rush over to find him kneeling beside something half buried in snow. A metal badge, tarnished but unmistakable. Hale lifts it carefully, wiping frost from the surface to reveal the name. Pike Daniel. The young ranger stares at the badge in disbelief. It belonged to his uncle, a ranger who vanished in 1956 without explanation. The weight of the discovery presses down on all of them. Kessler notes the badge's condition, rusted, but not weathered enough to have been exposed for decades. Ward looks toward the forest, tension rising as she considers what this means. The disappearance wasn't an accident, and the mountain is returning pieces of its past. As dusk settles, Ward powers on a portable monitor connected to a second trail cam they'd placed earlier. Static crackles before the screen reveals a flicker of motion, something tall slipping between distant trees. The figure pauses, turning just enough for its silhouette to stretch unnaturally across the snow. Hale leans closer, watching the way it shifts its weight, almost analyzing its surroundings. Pike steps back, remembering how the first camera was disturbed. The footage shows the figure moving closer before the screen jerks violently, as though the camera was struck. The image warps into darkness. No known animal targets cameras. No human moves like that. The team stares at the blank monitor, realizing the thing in the woods is watching them back. Night tightens its grip around the abandoned camp, swallowing color until only lantern light remains. The group debates their next move, voices strained by fear and uncertainty. Hale insists they stay focused and continue gathering evidence, but cracks are forming in their resolve. Ward argues they need better equipment. Pike wants to leave before they become part of the mountain's history. Kessler reminds them the settlers' journals ended abruptly, their final entries clipped mid-thought. The cold deepens, carrying a low hum from the tree line, a vibration they feel more than hear. The forest seems to lean closer with each passing minute. Something is circling them, unseen, patient, and familiar with this ground. And the camp, once a place of work, now feels like a grave waiting for its next story. They find him waiting by the riverbank at dawn, as if he knew they would eventually seek him out. Elijah Crow stands motionless, staring into the slow-moving water, his breath forming a thin mist that drifts like smoke. He speaks before Hale can ask a question, his voice low, worn by years of solitude. He tells them the mountains carry memories, and some of those memories learned to walk. Ward challenges his words, but Crow doesn't flinch. He has seen shapes watching from the pines long before the cameras were invented. Kessler listens intently, recognizing fragments of settler stories hidden in his warnings. Pike shivers despite the rising sun, sensing truth in the hunter's stillness. Crow finally turns to them, saying the creature does not hunt out of hunger. It visits out of remembrance. And lately, it has been coming closer. Inside the hunter's cabin, the air smells of pine resin and old smoke. Crow spreads out a hand-drawn map across his wooden table, its edges frayed from years of handling. Red marks circle regions he calls no-go zones. places where he felt watched or heard, footsteps that were too heavy, too measured. Ward studies the routes, noting how they overlap with the vanished settlers' final camps. Kessler runs her fingers over a faded line leading toward a ravine unknown to official records. Hale realizes the map reflects decades of silent observation, a lifetime of understanding the mountain's darker patterns. Pike hesitates before asking the question none of them want answered: why Crow never reported this? The hunter's reply is quiet. No one believes warnings that sound like stories. As afternoon fades, the team carries a new trail cam deep into the woods, determined to capture clearer evidence. The trees grow denser here, the air thicker, absorbing sound until their footsteps feel muted. Hale selects a narrow opening between two firs, the same place Crow called a crossing point. Ward calibrates the device with careful precision, her hands steady despite the rising tension. Pike scans the forest edge, sensing movement he can't confirm. Kessler writes notes about the terrain, but her eyes keep drifting toward the darkening ridge. When the camera clicks on, its tiny light blinks like a heartbeat in the shadows. For a moment, the forest seems to exhale. Something in the distance shifts, too slow to be wind. They leave quickly, but none of them look away from the trees. They return at dawn expecting blank footage, but the camera hangs crooked, half torn from its mount. Ward's breath catches as she examines the casing. The metal is bent inward, as though squeezed by an immense force. Hale flips through the captured images. Most are streaks of motion, as if something moved too quickly for the lens to follow. Then they find a frame showing the edge of a massive shoulder brushing past the camera, its texture rough, almost human, but stretched unnaturally. Pike steps back, unnerved by the sheer size suggested by the image. Kessler murmurs that the settlers described the same impossible proportions. The final shot is a blur of darkness, like a hand covering the lens. Whatever approached the camera knew exactly where it was. Back at their temporary post, the debate ignites. Ward insists they need stronger equipment and reinforcements. Pike argues they shouldn't stay another night. Hale tries to steady the rising panic, but even he feels the mountain pressing inward, shrinking the world around them. Kessler warns that if they walk away now, they may never learn what happened to the settlers, or to Pike's uncle. Outside, the wind begins circling the camp in slow, uneven gusts, like footsteps pacing just beyond the lantern glow. Crow's map weighs on Hale's mind, especially the ravine marked in deep red. The creature has revealed itself twice now, each time closer, each time more deliberate. A choice looms over them: retreat or enter the place the mountain has kept hidden for generations. The path to the ravine begins as a narrow crack in the terrain, almost invisible beneath tangled roots and frost-coated brush. Crow's map marks it with a heavy red circle, but nothing prepares the team for how wrong the air feels here. The temperature drops sharply, as though they've stepped into a place untouched by daylight. Hale leads the descent, boots slipping against damp stone, while Ward notes strange grooves carved into the rock, long, parallel, and deliberate. Kessler pauses to compare them to settler sketches, her breath catching as she recognizes the same ominous angles. Pike stays close, hearing faint movement below, a sound like slow shifts of weight in the dark. The ravine widens beneath them, revealing signs of habitation: stacked stones, charred wood, and scattered remnants of campfires older than any known settlement. Something lived here. Something waited. At the ravine's base, the team finds a crude structure, half hidden beneath years of debris. Ward brushes away, leaves to reveal a wooden idol carved from a split log. Its elongated shape disturbingly similar to the silhouette caught on the trail cam. The figure's torso is twisted, arms too long, head bowed as if listening. Hale studies the craftsmanship, rude but intentional, made with tools rather than claws. Kessler trembles slightly as she notes patterns etched around the idol's base, symbols repeating from the settlers' journals. Pike takes a step back, unsettled by the feeling that the idol isn't meant to represent something, but to resemble someone. The forest around them goes still again, the kind of silence that feels arranged. Whatever created this idol wanted to be remembered or feared. Kessler kneels by the idol, tracing the repeating symbols etched along its base, her breath catching as she deciphers fragments of meaning. All the markings resemble warnings rather than worship, phrases suggesting passage, watchers, and something described only as the tall memory. She flips through a brittle settler journal, matching symbols with frantic notes written days before the colony vanished. Hale realizes the carvings are not ancient. They were made with tools consistent with frontier settlers, linking the missing group directly to this ravine. Ward looks around, noticing the absence of animal tracks, as though the entire forest avoids the area. Pike whispers that the idol might not just mark a place, but a boundary between where people once lived and where something else began. The weight of history presses on them as the truth sharpens. The settlers were not taken by accident. The deeper they explore, the more the ravine begins to feel alive. Each footstep echoes strangely, bouncing back in delayed whispers like distant reply. Hale signals silence as a faint movement stirs above them, branches shifting without wind. Ward tightens her grip on her field kit, eyes scanning the ridge. Pike swears he sees a shadow leaning between two boulders, its shape too tall, too still to be human. Kessler presses her back against the stone wall, recalling a journal line about a presence that does not sleep but remembers. The forest seems to breathe around them, inhaling their fear. Then a rock falls, small but deliberate, landing inches from Hale's boot. The message is unmistakable. Whatever lives in this ravine knows they are here, and it is not afraid of them. The scream erupts without warning. A low, drawn-out howl that tears through the ravine like a blade. It vibrates in their chests, shaking loose dust from the cliff walls. Pike stumbles back, covering his ears. Ward flinches, eyes wide with disbelief. Hale raises his flashlight toward the source, but the beam reveals only shifting darkness. Kessler freezes, recognizing the sound described in the settlers' final entries. A cry, neither of beast nor man, but of something remembering the shape of both. The howl rises again, closer this time, echoing with layers, as if more than one voice answers. The team gathers tightly, lantern light trembling around them. The forest no longer hides its presence. Whatever has haunted the mountain for generations has stepped fully into the night. And now it knows they've found its home. They reach the upper ridge just before dawn, the world washed in pale silver light that barely cuts through the mist. The second trail cam lies half buried beneath broken branches, as if something tried to hide it rather than destroy it. Hale lifts it carefully, aware of the weight this device might carry. Ward wipes the lens, noting fingerprints or something like them imprinted on the metal. Kessler stands apart, watching the tree line, sensing movement that refuses to reveal itself. Pike urges them to check the footage immediately, fear sharpening his voice. When the screen flickers to life, even the cold seems to pause. Frame after frame shows the woods shifting in unnatural patterns, branches swaying while the air remains still. Then the silhouette appears, sharper than before, turning toward the camera with deliberate purpose. The truth is no longer hiding in shadows. The footage plays slowly, every frame holding details none of them expected. The figure moves through the trees with unsettling coordination, shifting its weight like a human but bending its limbs with unnatural reach. Kessler whispers that the settlers described the same impossible gait, a blend of familiarity and distortion. Ward zooms in, analyzing the creature's movement. Its torso twists as though freed from the limits of bone. Hale's jaw tightens as he watches the thing pause, sensing the camera, tilting its head in slow calculation. Pike steps back, unable to reconcile what he sees with anything he's ever known. This is no trick of light, no glitch, no animal caught mid-motion. The thing in the footage behaves with purpose and intelligence. It is watching the camera the same way they watch it. They scrub through the recording again, stopping at a faint flash of light darting behind the figure. It moves with intention, weaving between trees like a signal rather than a natural glow. Ward suggests bioluminescence, but even she doubts her own words. Hale enlarges the frame. The light pulses in short bursts, almost rhythmic, as though communicating something. Kessler recalls entries describing flickers like lanterns carried by unseen hands. Pike watches the light vanish behind a mound of snow, only to reappear farther away in an instant. It is not random. It is guiding, either the creature itself or something connected to it. The realization settles in the air like frost. They are not dealing with a solitary being. The mountain holds more than one secret, and at least one of them burns with its own unnatural glow. Ward rewinds the footage yet again, slowing it until each movement becomes almost still. At the far edge of a frame, she spots something half buried in snow, a shape too angular to be natural. Hale enhances the image. The silhouette sharpens into the outline of a crude wooden structure. Kessler recognizes it instantly, a marker used by settlers to indicate burial grounds. Pike's breath catches as he realizes the creature is standing near it, almost guarding it. The settlers didn't just vanish. They were placed somewhere, deliberately, and marked. As the frame brightens, another detail emerges, long scratches carved into the marker. The same pattern found in the abandoned logging camp. History isn't scattered across the mountain, it is connected by a pattern of warnings left behind. The truth has been waiting in plain sight. The wind shifts abruptly, carrying a low groan through the trees, a sound that feels far too close. Hale shuts off the monitor, ordering the group to pack their gear. The forest is waking, and they can all feel it, like the mountain itself turning its attention toward them. Pike hesitates, staring into the fog, convinced he saw a figure stepping between the pines. Ward urges him to move, but even she keeps glancing over her shoulder. Kessler clutches her journals tightly, now certain the settlers weren't fleeing a beast, but something far more complex, a presence tied to memory, territory, and ritual. As they retreat from the ridge, the woods fall silent in a way that feels intentional. Whatever they uncovered is watching them leave, and it knows they are coming back. They return to the ravine before dawn, following the same narrow descent, though this time the air feels different, charged, almost expectant. Hale leads with his flashlight low, its beam slicing through the mist like a warning. Pike walks close behind him, gripping his radio as though it might shield him. Ward examines the ground, noticing fresh disturbances in the soil, as if something heavy moved through only hours early. Kessler whispers that the settlers once described this same tension, a pressure beneath the earth that signaled they were not alone. As they reach the ravine floor, the woods fall into an unnerving silence, every sound swallowed before it can form. A shadow shifts along the ridge above them, too tall to be human. Hale steadies his breath. The confrontation they feared is no longer avoidable. Something is waiting. Kessler calls them over to a mound of earth, partially covered by fallen branches. She kneels and brushes the debris aside, revealing wooden beams arranged into a crude frame. Hale helps her clear the soil, uncovering fragments of fabric, rusted tools, and bones too small to belong to animals. Ward steps back in horror as she realizes they have uncovered a burial site, one untouched since the settlers vanished. The grave markers match those seen in the footage, carved with familiar scratches. Pike trembles, whispering that some bones are too recent, echoes of disappearances spanning decades. The truth settles like cold ash. No single tragedy occurred here. The mountain holds generations of the missing, each absorbed into the same silent, hidden ritual. The ravine was a grave, long before the cameras captured anything. Ward lifts one of the wooden beams, revealing another layer beneath, sketches burned into the wood by settlers who must have sensed their fate. The drawings show elongated figures moving among tents, watching from treetops carrying lantern-like glows that mimic the pulsing light in the footage. Hale traces the lines with a gloved hand, each image confirming what the journals hinted. The settlers did not fear a beast. They feared something that understood them. Kessler identifies symbols describing the tall memory, a presence that recorded the lives of those who entered its territory, marking their stories in wood, earth, and shadow. Pike realizes that whatever they've encountered is not hunting. It is remembering. The creature preserves what it claims, and the settlers became part of that memory. A sudden thump echoes from above, followed by another, heavier, slower. Hale points his flashlight upward, but the beam fades before reaching the ridge. Ward steadies her breath, recognizing the rhythm from the footage, the same deliberate pacing around the cameras. Pike clutches his radio, its static rising as though reacting to a presence. Kessler steps back, realizing the creature is not hiding. It is circling them, drawing closer with each impact. Another thump shakes loose dust from the ravine walls, scattering across their boots. Hale orders everyone to move, but the path behind them darkens as a tall shape blocks the faint morning light. The outline bends in impossible ways, its form shifting like memory-made flesh. The settlers weren't running from a monster. They were running from something that wanted to take them forever. They escape the ravine only when the creature retreats into deeper shadows, its movements slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. Hale leads the team back toward the ridge, each step heavy with the weight of what they uncover. Ward insists they document everything before authorities dismiss it as myth. Pike says nothing, haunted by the thought that the creature recognized him, recognized his family. Kessler closes her journals, knowing the settlers' final entries were not warnings but farewells. As they reach the tree line, the forest falls unnaturally calm, the kind of silence that seals itself shut. Hale turns back one last time, seeing a faint pulse of light flicker deep within the ravine, a final reminder that the mountain remembers. And though they leave with the truth, the presence remains, waiting for the next story to claim.